Greetings to all of our change makers, and we welcome you back to another amazing interview. I just get so excited with the folks who have come to our group and that I've had the opportunity to interview. And I hope you're taking some time to get to know some of these amazing people because this Facebook group is heavily about encouraging collaboration. I think small business owners are the best. We have the ability to create new solutions. And when we come together to do that, we can make better solutions than anybody else out there. So today we are so excited to be able to introduce our new friend, Jessy. So Jessy, please tell everybody who you are and what you do.
All right. So, hi, I'm Jessy. I am a mom and a wife and a student and a daughter and all the things, right? I wear lots of hats. And in doing so, we experience a lot of, the hustle culture. You and I talked about this a little bit already, but I was someone that struggled a lot with mom guilt and wanting to have a career and feeling like I had to work like I wasn't a mom, but mom like I didn't work. And it caused a lot of balance and guilt issues for me. And so that was something that I felt like when it all came to a head, and I was like, I don't want to do any of this anymore. I realized that we as women and small business owners need to support each other because we are in a hustle culture where it's also right now it's like frowned upon to work together versus compete, and I just don't like that. And so I am trying to, you know, help women change their mindset about balance and being able to show up intentionally as a mom and as a career woman and do anything that makes your heart happy in a way that doesn't cost you, joy in other ways. And some of that has to do a lot with mental health. I'm a graduate student about to start my practicum to be licensed for mental health counseling. And, one of those things that you have to have a license to do very specific things that I want to do to help people. But on the flip side of that, I also launched Lotus and Light, which is a coaching business that works specifically with women and teenagers to work on mindset and working through some of that mom guilt and balance and finding ways to be very intentional without feeling like you have to go from one extreme to the other, because I feel like right now that's what we feel you have to do, and that's not true.
Mm, I love it. I love it. Well, and we know there's such a huge need. You know that my husband and I are very involved in the whole concept of suicide prevention, and so many of our young people, and both guys and young gals, they're suicide, second leading cause of death of 10 to 18-year-olds. It is absolutely
It's terrifying.
horrific.
Yeah.
So, totally not acceptable. And we're grateful for people like you who are willing to step in and see what we can do to disrupt this epidemic. So, obviously you have a huge heart for the whole mental wellness kind of thing, but can you tell us a little bit about your backstory? What led you to have so much passion around this?
So like everyone, I've had rough patches and I've had, traumas and all of those things, but a good portion of my childhood was not great. And the first time I ever spoke to somebody about it, they like reacted and they're like, "Aw," and I was like, "Nope, I will not share with that anymore. Nope." And that was probably in like my late teenage, early 20s. And so now I'm a little bit older than that. I'm past that. And as I went into adulthood. My husband and I, when we first got together, he had kids from a previous marriage. And I made the choice, I loved him enough that they were a package deal. And I became a mom basically overnight. And so the things that I had not worked through and healed from my own childhood later on would show up. And so there's a lot that goes with that situation too. Like their mom is not a delightful person. And I tried to go about everything the way that I would want someone to go about it. And it was just met with disdain at every corner. Um, and so I, not having healed from some of those things, didn't handle everything the best that I could have. And over, several years, I put everyone's needs above my own. I became burnt out. I became super depressed, super anxious. And at one point, so we do have one biological daughter, and she came after several miscarriages. And she is my whole world, right? Like everyone knows that. The easiest way to get on my best side, be good and love my kid. Be good to her and love her. The easiest way to get on my shit list is to not be good to my children and specifically her. And I will just, that's it for me. But it had gotten to a point where I was so anxious and so depressed that I was starting to like disconnect. And there were times where, like, at one point she was probably a year and a half and she went to jump off of the couch onto like a platform that had like bricks and it had a pellet stove. And she clearly would have hurt herself. When I tell you I was like floating above my body watching this, I could not have reacted if I wanted to. And our oldest daughter at the time was like, there's something wrong with her. Like, this isn't Jessy. This isn't how she is as a mom. This isn't. And it was kind of in those moments and, talking to my husband, and I was like, yeah, there's something wrong with me. And I started sharing, well, not then. So I started therapy. I started, talking about it and then realizing some of it stemmed from my childhood traumas I hadn't dealt with. And for those of you that are considering starting therapy or coaching, sometimes it's going to get uglier before it gets better. And I say that because it absolutely got uglier before it got better for me. And then as I started to like go through things and heal through them and work through them, it like for me at one point it felt like it was just leading to more issues and more, like things I hadn't thought about in years. Now it was like all consuming. And then it was just like, you have to make a choice. Like if you want to actually do the work and you want to show up for yourself and for those around you. And I wasn't at one point, and I had a therapist that I love. But she one day was like, listen, you come to session and you do the work in the session, but you're not doing anything when we leave here. Like there's only so much we're going to be able to do. And it was like, I'm a perfectionist, I'm a people pleaser, and which is not a good thing per se, but it stemmed from my past. And she told me basically she was going to fire me as a client. And that was like the wildest thing for me because I've never been fired from anything. And I was like, we're not about to start here. Like, no, thank you. And so it kind of forced me to start doing the work. And as I did it, I realized like, oh, things really can get better. It's just about your mindset and the way you approach things. And, looking at who I was even 2 years ago is a wild representation of who I had been masking as versus who I am now. And so it's become a huge part of my life because I feel like in those moments I felt so alone. But then when I got to a place where I started sharing my story, I had people reaching out, thanking me because they are going through very similar things, or they've been struggling with anxiety so bad, but they'll never talk about it because they don't want people to judge them. And it just made me really aware that I feared those same things too. And I think that's how I got so bad off, was because I hadn't talked about it out of fear of judgment. And so I kind of just want people to know, like, you don't have to fear being judged, and the people that are going to judge you or think differently of you aren't your people anyway. And there are 100% people out here like you and I that want more than anything to support people and lift them up and be positive. And it could change like the whole way that we work as a society.
That is absolutely the truth. And, I was thinking as you were talking about all of this that, you had to go through this internal healing and such. And one of the things that I think is absolutely beautiful and wonderful that I definitely would love for you to share is as you went through that internal healing, you were also able to do some amazing things to help your physical self. Yes?
Yes. So I obviously, like most people, I've struggled with my weight like my whole adult life. And it is something that, we've tried all the crash diets. We've done all the things that work great when you're doing them, and then the minute you stop, you gain the weight back. After I had my daughter, I had the sleeve surgery in 2019, and it is something that I I don't regret it because at the time it is what I needed to stay alive and to, that was some of the darkest years of my life. And it's funny because I had my daughter and it was this grand, wonderful thing. Two things can coexist and be true at the same time, right? She was the light of my life. It was the most joyous time. I was the most miserable. And I was, oh, struggling so bad and nobody knew it because I made the choice not to let them know.
Mm,
And so one way that showed up was my weight, right? So I had the sleeve surgery. I lost probably 100-ish pounds and I maintained it. It's not like I gained that back, but then I just kind of hit like a plateau and it was, I was better than I was previously. So it was great. And then over the last probably year and a half, I've done the most healing, the most work. I've gone to any and all workshops you can think of, like trauma informed treatments. And some of that has to do with my schooling too. As I was going through this, I realized that had I had a therapist that cared the way my therapist did as a teenager, I might not have gone through some of the struggles that I went through. And it became very clear to me that that's my passion. That's what I want to do. And so now I'm almost done with that on the coursework side, and I start my practicum soon. Um, but I say all that to say that it wasn't until I started working on the internal things that I started losing weight and I started, you know, getting out of my own way to try new things. As silly as it sounds, like I couldn't, when I first started trying to lose weight, my first known weight was 414 pounds. And I say known weight because at the time I was so large, we couldn't find a scale to tell me my actual weight. And I had been walking. So the family I nannied for lived in like a circle. And at the time, I couldn't even make it half of the circle, which was about, it was the full circle was about a mile. I couldn't even make it like a quarter of it. And I would have to stop and take a break and we'd look at ducks or we would, find something to do. And then by the time I, had gone, it was about 4 to 5 months later. And it would be embarrassing then, but now it's like I had to go to a recycling center to get on a scale that would tell me my weight, and it was 414 pounds. So
mm,
I think that I was probably pushing 500 pounds when
mm,
all this first started.
mm,
And so that's when the process started, and I yo-yoed and I went up and down. And then, I had been pretty much the same for about 3 years. And I decided last year for my birthday that I was going to be very intentional about my overall health, my physical health, my mental health, our financial health, our relationship health with, not just my husband, but also our daughters and, the people we come into contact with. I'm very intentional about all of those things. And since my birthday in December, I have lost about 70 pounds.
wow.
Um, and I've been more consistent than I've ever been in my life, but I don't eat much different than I was eating. I'm just intentional about it. So if
Mm,
I'm hungry, it's one of those things I preach to my kids, like, are you hungry or are you snacky? If you're hungry, you'll go get some fruit or a vegetable or food. And most of the time they're like, I don't want that. I want a snack. Well, I've started doing the same thing. Like if I'm, craving something, I'm like, am I hungry? Or, like, am I snacky or am I hungry? And then I just started making small intentional decisions. So like I'll eat protein first. And if after that I'm hungry or I still want something else, then I'll let myself, because I don't believe in like 100% cutting out all junk food is what led me to unhealthy habits. And so some of that kind of has transitioned to like the ripple effect. My family overall is healthier right now. We're all moving more. We go on family walks when it's not 1,000 degrees outside. And, my 6-year-old at night, she's like, hey, you want to do yoga? And it's part of our nightly routine now. And it's something me 70, even 70 pounds ago would have been like, no, I don't want to do yoga every night. That sounds horrific. But now I'm like, I love it. It's a bonding time with her that I wouldn't have otherwise. And it's
Mm.
just shown me how amazing our bodies are. Um, I have read a book, and I don't know if you've read it, but it's called The Body Keeps Score, I think. Um, but it is, the first time I read it, it was really hard to get through. So it's not a super easy read, but it is basically, it breaks down. I've read it like 4 times now, and 3 of those over this last year. Um, and every time it's more amazing, but it's basically how your body holds on to the trauma and the tensity and all of the things. And so even when you're not aware of it, your body is. And your body is. So as I'm working through some of those things, this is my body rewarding me and thanking me for healing through some of those things by letting go of things and
Mm.
allowing me to now make the progress that I've been trying to make for years. And I mean, to me, sometimes it sounds crazy, but like there's no other way to explain it.
I love it. I love it. That is amazing. So, yeah, and congrats to you on finding that ability to be more intentional and to really put the focus on we're relieved because, yeah, I've heard it said when we can release some of those old traumas and old emotions, we can release weight with it. And it
Yeah.
sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. So, that's a beautiful thing. I love it. Well, and I know you also had told me previously, that you also went through a period of quite a bit of understanding differently about, the I have a friend who says we all get too caught up in trying to keep up with the Joneses, but what we don't realize is the Joneses are idiots.
I mean, it's so true. So I mean, in terms of that, right? Like especially if you have teenagers or if you know somebody that has a teenager, they are so quick to like see something on social media and just believe it. That's, like, oh, look at this person, they're on vacation. And I'm like, yeah, but honey, you don't know what happened for that vacation photo to take place, right? Like that might be the most miserable family. If that's what you would love for yourself, like sorry it's not here. But I feel like this really came to a point for us in 2021 because we had a house fire,
Mhm.
and we lost everything, with the exception of like some stuff that was in the storage unit and or like in the storage out back. But we lost all of the important things, right? We lost except each other. Everyone made it out okay, except my husband had minor burns. And our oldest daughter was the only one home with him. And so she had some things we needed to work through, but overall everyone was okay. So in that, we realized none of those materialistic things mattered. And we had thousands of dollars worth of just stuff. And there's things that even now, like recently somebody said something about like, my wedding dress being like a photo op for, and I was like, oh, I don't have my wedding dress. And so like there are things that obviously hold sentimental value, but for the most part, it really made me sit and realize like I just didn't care. I didn't care about having, the fanciest, flashiest cars, the stuff. And I never really was that person. But
Mhm.
having 5 daughters, like they all care what they look like. They all care, they have to have whatever's cool and popular at school right now. And, there was a good chunk of time while we were rebuilding that we were like, listen, we're going to be really honest with you. Okay. I can't afford to buy you a $40 cup because it says Stanley on it. So
Yeah.
you can get a water bottle that is the same type of thing and it's like 15 bucks or you could just not carry one at all. Those are your two choices because I'm not going to stress myself out financially so that you can fit in with a weird trend that kids don't even take care of stuff. Why are
Mhm.
we spending so much money on a water bottle for our kids to drop 5 times throughout the day? Like I just couldn't fathom it. And then our situation specifically, we didn't have a home, we didn't have clothes, we didn't have shoes for the kids. I was like, listen, there are things that I am prioritizing. And some of those things mean that you're not going to get the most expensive, the name brand. I will make sure you have things that you need. Outside of that, like you're going to have to learn that like priorities are a thing. And then also in that moment, I realized like my husband and I, we kind of set that tone too. Like he's a car guy. And so he, has car styles that he loves. And he had a car that he loved, and that was his baby. And in the fire, his car happened to be next to the house and it got burnt up. And, it was
Mm.
devastating. And so when he got the next car, it wasn't the flashiest, fanciest. It was a nice car. It was reliable to get us from A to B. And, over time he loved it and that became his baby. But, that was the start of like, hey, listen, if we could go and we could get the car of your dad's dreams, we would. But we have children and we have priorities and so it was like a good, really teachable moment for the kids to kind of learn.
Yeah.
And now some of them are like, yeah, I don't care. Like, you can just get me sweatpants from Walmart. And God love her, my 6-year-old wears a dress and shorts every day, and she could care less where the dress comes from, right? She's like, I don't care. I just want to wear a dress and shorts. And I'm just like, I love that. Like, and so it's the more time goes on and the less pressure we put on ourselves to have like the nicest of things or name brand because it's a name brand, I think we're showing our kids like it's okay. And they're starting to follow that too. Like they're like, for example, our 15-year-old came home the other day and she was like, I was talking to this girl at school today and she told me how awful her summer was. And I was like, listening and I'm waiting and I'm like, Jordan, isn't that the same girl that you showed us the picture of the vacation? And she was like, oh my gosh, it was. And I said, okay, listen, this is the perfect example of what I was trying to tell you. Okay. Because first of all, teenagers can't even pay for vacations like she went on. So
Mm-mm.
clearly, I'm glad she got to take that vacation, just like I'm glad that, we've been able to take you places. But
Mm.
also, like, this is a perfect example of what I was trying to tell you, honey. Like, she literally just sat and told you how miserable her whole summer was. Maybe those were the best 3 days of her entire summer.
Mm.
Yes, that's what she put on social media. She didn't share that it was an awful summer the rest of it. She
Right.
literally shared just the good part of it. And that's what social media I feel like has become a majority
Yes.
of is just the highlight reels, not what happens to get there or what happens on the other 6 days of the week.
I hear you, and I couldn't agree more. It is so true, especially with the younger generation. Like I said, I think more of us who, we're a little more advanced in our wisdom years, and we're desiring to help create hope for other people. We are putting more of the good, bad, and the ugly, shall we say,
Yes.
out
Yeah.
there. And it's a good thing. I mean, and it's still a relatively new thing for me to put stuff out there that's talking about some of the challenges that I've been through, but man, it's amazing the amount of activity you get on those posts. People are craving finding ways to have hope. So,
Yes.
I think it's wonderful the opportunities that we all get to be able to especially teach some of our young people about these things. Well, I'm curious. I didn't get an answer from you earlier when we were talking, but do you have any big visions for your future? Where do you hope that your work is going to take you?
So it's funny because when you asked me, I was like, "Ooh, I hadn't really like thought about it." So while I was waiting, I kind of just like typed something up. And so I think for me, in like a very quick thought of this, is that Lotus and Light and eventually my counseling practice, I would like to keep them separate, but obviously like umbrella. And it will become, like a movement or a community where women can come together, release guilt, reclaim their power, and, run their lives based off balance and confidence and more joy, because I feel like that's something that we're missing.
Mm,
And I want to create spaces online and in person where women can feel seen, supported, inspired, to honor, their bodies, their stories, and even their dreams. And I
yeah.
want it to be a place that can have that ripple effect. I say it all the time, but like, my biggest dream and vision is that I can make the biggest ripple effect as far as healing and empowerment goes. That even years after I'm gone, I hope somebody, still mentions my name or Lotus and Light.
Awesome. Awesome. And I am sure you are very capable to make that vision come to fruition. So, way to go. So, how can people reach out to you if they'd like to connect?
So I am on social media. It's just my name, Jessy Marsh. I do have a page for Lotus and Light. So it is on Facebook. It's a public page. I do have a private group, but my page is public, and my email is on there. And then once this post, I will also. I'm not someone that like hides my cell phone number or anything like that. Like I'm. You can always message me. I always jokingly say, "Don't call me," because I probably won't answer. But you can text me, you can email me, you can send me a message on Facebook, and I will get back to you as soon as I can.
Awesome.
And I do have a website. Part of Lotus and Light is that I wanted to keep it very as cheap as possible so that I can reach more people. So
Mhm.
I do have a website. It's kind of long because it's set up through Canva, but I'll post that when this video is posted too.
Awesome. That'll be perfect. Good, good, good. All right. Well, it has been a pleasure to get to know you more and to get a better understanding of what you're offering and where you're going. So, as we wrap this up, do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to share with people?
Ooh, I think I would just say give yourself permission to take up space. Your voice, your story, your needs, even your dreams, they're not too much. They're exactly enough and they're exactly what we need and what other people need to hear.
I love it. That is an awesome way to end this interview. So, thank you so much, Jesse, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. And thanks to all of our change makers for watching, listening, and taking time to figure, are you someone that they need to be collaborating with? So, we will see you all in the next interview. Until then, have a fabulous day and take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.